but his job is done.
It's dealt with. Jaissle! Incredible!
Welcome back to the Backseat Athlete. Today we're going to be talking about Eddie Howe, his recent departure from Newcastle and what this means for the club moving forward. So I thought we'd start this video just taking a quick look back through Eddie's career. Obviously he started at Bournemouth, played 200 games for them, moved to Portsmouth for a bit, had a couple of loans, ended up back at Bournemouth where he would actually start his managerial journey. I think he retired at age 29 after about 250 games for the seaside club. He managed Bournemouth from 2008 till about 2020, but he ended his time at Bournemouth in 2020, actually managing to get them all the way up from I think the National League all the way into the promised land of the Premier League. But anyway, he came to Newcastle in 2021 after the takeover, replacing Steve Bruce, and thank God he did, because honestly, watching Brucey ball was the most depressing thing week in, week out. Oh, just awful team to watch. But he managed us for 5 years after the takeover, managing to get us an EFL Cup. He got us back into the Champions League and was able to bring the hope back to Newcastle fans. He ended his time at Newcastle with actually nearly a 50% winning record, which I just think speaks volumes. Obviously, the main thing was that EFL Cup in 2025, and honestly, as a Newcastle fan, this was the best day of my life. There was fully grown men all around the pub crying with joy because they'd been watching Newcastle for however long and never seen us win anything, but finally we were able to get it done against Liverpool. It made it all that bit sweeter. Obviously he came in about like October sort of time. His first signing was Kieran Trippier for 12 million from Atletico Madrid. He was exactly the sort of player we needed, had experience in the big matches as well, knew what it meant to win. But then I'm sorry, these two men right here, Dan Burn, a Geordie, he's just been absolutely unbelievable. Recently has been unbelievable for England as well, as he's broken into that team. Bruno Guimaraes, he is the heartbeat of our team. I really hope he doesn't end up going to Arsenal this window, because like honestly I don't know what I'd do without Bruno. You can tell he loves the squad and he's exactly what we look for in a Newcastle player. You don't actually have to be from Newcastle, but we can adopt you as a Geordie. If you come in and you buy into the squad, you buy into the fans and you buy into the area, and you're one of our heroes. You're almost a working class hero. We didn't really sell anybody in that January, which I actually think is quite good because it's not upsetting the apple cart too much. We were happy to get rid of Ashley, I can tell you that much. There was literally like parades and celebrations just on the street to get rid of that fat lump. But I think first season stability, 11th in the Premier League, as you can see there, I think is perfect. We could have easily have been bought by the Saudis, sold all of our players that we didn't think was good enough, completely got rid of all the squad harmony, and then end up in a relegation battle out of nowhere. But then we go into his first full season in charge, and then a bit of a spoiler, we ended up getting Champions League football, man. As a Newcastle fan, like I was born in 2004, just as Bobby Robson was leaving the club, and I just remember hearing about those days, do you know what I mean? Hearing about the 90s when we were playing like teams like Barcelona and that, and it was like romantic to me. Like in recent seasons, I've been watching Mo the Army in the Championship. It seemed like a whole different world. It seemed like we would never get back to the heights of that. And Eddie, in his very first season, managed to get us fourth, managed to get us to a cup final. Obviously, some big additions to the squad this year. Nick Pope for 10 million, Sven Botman for 35, which I think is a really undervalued transfer. Isak, the less we talk about him, the better, 63 million. But we've got to admit, when he played for us, he was unreal. And then in the January, we brought in Anthony Gordon for 45 million. More than anything, these couple of windows showed like our intent. People have got to realise we've spent about 30 million net every year. That's not insane, do you know what I mean? I'm sure there's been clubs spending much more than us. We actually made some really good signings that have actually panned out really well. I think what was essential for us as well, we didn't actually get rid of that many players again. Do you know what I mean? We didn't affect the harmony of the squad. We were bringing players in, we're bolstering the quality in the team, and we're not really upsetting the players that are kind of going down the pecking order. Yes, they might not be getting as much playing time, but they're still in and around the squad. And then in Eddie's second full season in charge, we actually managed to get 7th, which if you put into perspective of us playing in the Champions League, of us having that many more games with a squad not that used to it really, I think it's actually not bad at all. Obviously in this window, again, bolstering the quality in the team, we brought in Tonali for 55 million. What a deal that was. We've just sold him for 100 million. Harvey Barnes, who I think is such an underrated winger in the Premier League, I think he's unreal. Tino for 35, and he's not even done developing. He's a year older than me. That makes me feel absolutely god awful. But really quality signings, not playing ridiculous for players, not completely overhauling the squad, but really just getting them real key positions. And again, even though we sold a couple of players, we're really not getting rid of like half the squad, do you know what I mean, like you'd expect. And then we go to what I think most Newcastle fans would describe as the best season that Newcastle fans have had in a very long time. We won the EFL Cup. We finally got a bit of silverware. We finally managed to get over the line, and Eddie brought that to us. The rebuild, even though it wasn't complete, it was definitely a sign that it was going in the right direction, that we had brought the right sort of players in. We managed to finish 5th as well, which qualified us back for the Champions League. And I think actually not qualifying for the Champions League actually helped us out this year, because it meant we really focused on these three tournaments. And we managed to have such a successful season, even making a profit in the transfer window. We've made a profit on Minter transfer within a year of 24 million, selling him to Brighton for 30. We actually had to sell Anderson for financial fair play reasons. Obviously, he's at City now for over 100 million. What a player he's become. We sold Miggy because there just wasn't a place for him in the team anymore. But you can see in our most successful season, which is why I don't get the hate that we get from teams really and supporters alike. We spend all this money and we're just buying the league. We bought Lewis Hall for 28 million, which what a transfer that was in hindsight. Asula even for 15 million, I think it's a fucking bargain with what he's become. But this season, finishing 5th, winning that cup most importantly. He's done so much for us through his 5 years with the club, but this year especially holds a very special place in my heart and I'm sure all Newcastle fans. But then off the back of that majorly successful year, we come to last season. And this is where things started falling apart a little bit. This is where people started calling for Eddie Howe out. Obviously, Eddie's been this great transition. It's kind of like Southgate. England were in a really dire position. And then Southgate came in and he gave the hope back to the people. We got into semi-finals and finals and we really competed again. And I think Eddie is exactly that manager for us. He's one of the best managers you're ever going to find. And that's why I think after leaving Newcastle, he should now go and do the England job. He came in a really tough time. Obviously, just after the takeover, that could go so badly and it just could have been complete chaos. Eddie came in and really stabilised the ship, showed us that there was hope in the very near future, won us a trophy for the first time in 50 plus years. What an important job that was. And I think there is something to say about knowing your role. And I think he did that perfectly here. We love him to bits. He's done such a good job, but his job is done. And last season just wasn't good enough for the players that we brought in, for what they expect. But we had to give Eddie the chance because he'd earned it. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why it wasn't done immediately after the season concluded. Maybe it's just because they wanted to talk through things. Maybe they wanted to get the transition right. And maybe they were lining this guy up, Jaissle, who I'm going to talk about in a minute. I do think the mistakes of last season started in the summer transfer window. Unlike this year where we've brought in really good players that we can develop for the future, we just went out and just bought all the good players that we thought were good from around the league and from around Europe. Elanga, who had a really good year for Forest, here for 52 million. Voltemada 65, which I didn't mind, but if you're bringing in a player like Voltemada, he should be your first choice striker. Brought in Wisser as well, and I think that just confused the whole team and the fans as well. It was like, who's our first choice striker? We don't seem to have like a starting 11 like we have in previous years. It didn't seem like Eddie had so much of a clear plan. It looked like after all that success, he was told to just kick on, and he kind of panicked a bit and just started buying here, there and everywhere rather than thinking about the squad as a whole. And I think what didn't help with that was the Isak situation. I think that situation just came out of the blue. We managed to get 125 million out of it, which I think caused all the subsequent spending. We just overpaid. In all the previous seasons leading up to this, Eddie had a plan and what he wanted out of the players and how he was going to develop them. And then this year with the Isak situation, I just think it set it all into disarray. But if Eddie Howe did think he was going to continue with the job and did have any say in these transfers, I'm really excited for what these transfers can become. And they're all from around Europe and none of their price tags are too extreme. And it really just gives them an opportunity to come into the squad, really burst onto the scene and kind of take the position by the horns, do you know what I mean? And really come in and make an impact in the squad. Obviously, we brought in a lot of money with the Gordon and Tonali deals, who I think wanted to leave after the disappointment of last season. I think Gordon's always wanted to go to somewhere like Barca, so we sold him for a profit. We sold Tonali for nearly double the money, which I was really pleased with. But I have to say, I'm really encouraged by this window so far. And obviously, as I said, I don't know how much say Eddie Howe had on these signings, but I think this is the right direction. Don't just go to the Premier League and go like, oh, they had a good year, let's get them in. Like we did with Chris Wood, like we did with Elanga, and like we did with Visser, and we can see how all of them, so far at least, have turned out. Let's get players in who we think we can develop, who are maybe on the younger side, who can buy into the club's identity and buy into the squad and add to the team, rather than just already being an established player and trying to fit into the team. Obviously, Eddie's stepping aside, and the guy who looks like he's taken over from him is this guy, Matthias Jaissle. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly at all. And weirdly enough, I think this guy Jaissle actually mirrors Eddie Howe quite a bit. Obviously, ended his playing career quite early to focus on managing, which Eddie did as well. But he started off in like the Red Bull Academy, obviously here managing Leafring, and they do really seem to have a preference for young, exciting managers with new footballing philosophy. Obviously, he managed Salzburg for 2 years before going to Al-Ahli in Saudi, and obviously we as a club have a lot of links to Saudi. Let's look at the sort of players he's been managing at Al-Ahli. He's been managing Ivan Toney, who is actually one of my favourite players. Used to play for Newcastle actually before we sold him, and has really kicked on since then. So he's used to managing top quality players. Obviously, the Saudi League and the Premier League is very different. And I know it's just stats, but if we just look at his win percentage, he's managed 250 games and won 67% of his games, so like 2 out of 3 games. But that's just amazing to see from a young manager. It's so often that a young manager goes to these big teams and is unable to replicate the success that they've had throughout their history. But it looks like he's just gone there and really kicked on and really embedded his football philosophy. He won the Austrian League with Red Bull Salzburg in back-to-back years for the 2 years that he was there. He's won the Champions League with Al-Ahli as well twice, which is just insane. So you can tell this guy's just really really used to winning, which I think is exactly what we need. As I said before, Eddie was definitely the transition manager, and now we've really got to kick on. We've got to make success our normal, like all these big clubs have done. If we want to compete with these sort of teams, we've got to have that mentality. We've got to have the mentality of like, we expect to win. Obviously, so far before the takeover, we were used to losing, and we were quite depressed as fans, having to switch football on every week. But actually, the quality of football was just absolutely dreadful. Eddie Howe's come in and I think exceeded expectations, brought the hope back to the club, the hope back to the city, and I think it's time now for Jaissle to come in and really kick on it and embed the mentality of winning, and we expect to be up there very soon and compete. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Eddie Howe's recent departure from Newcastle and what we could be looking at in the very near future in Jaissle, coming over from Saudi, coming over from Al-Ahli. But at the end of this video, I just want to say thank you so much to Eddie Howe. I obviously know that he's probably not going to see this, but just like a personal message from me, as I said, he really brought the fun back to football for me. He really brought the love back to it. He gave me the best day of my life as a Newcastle fan, watching us win that cup victory, and he really did that. Obviously, the team played a big part in it, but he really masterminded the rebuild of the squad. Do you know what I mean? And managing the players and getting the best out of the players, getting the best out of players like Joey, who was a failed striker. People forget we bought him for 40 million from, I think it was Hoffenheim. Had no confidence whatsoever. Eddie put him out wide at first, so he didn't have to worry about scoring goals so much, and then eventually found that his best role was as centre mid alongside Bruno, and he's just flourished in that position. And I think that's an example of what Eddie can bring to a team. As I said before, in my personal ranking of Newcastle managers, he actually ranks top 3 now, only behind the absolute legends that are Sir Bobby Robson and Kevin Keegan. And the final thing for this video, I just want to say rest in peace to King Kevin Keegan. Obviously, we got the news that he passed away quite recently. Absolutely devastated. And obviously Keegan, just what a legend. Just will never be forgotten. He was, is, and forever will be a Newcastle legend. Rest in peace, King Kev. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. But for now, I've been the Backseat Athlete and I'll see you in the next one.